X-Men 97 has ignited a series of conversations, and in some circles, curiosity about the X-Men, as like the 92 animated series of which it is a continuation, for some, this is their first encounter with these versions of the characters, or spending any length of time with them, while for others, it's a return. There are lots of nods and references in these 97 episodes, just as there was in the 92 series. All of these things are on display in the first episode of the first season, entitled To Me, My X-Men. So I thought it would be fun to go through this episode and take a look at some of those instances, and really just get a feel for episode 1. So we're gonna go through it, spoiler time, spoiler warning, it's gonna be very spoilerific, and if at the end of it you find that there's anything that has been mentioned or you think I've forgotten, then let me know. I'm Sasha, this is Casually Comics, and let's take a look at the first episode. We did an impromptu discussion of the first 2 episodes, more focused on animation style and how it fared compared to its predecessors and how they were linked. So if you missed that, I'll link it down below. This here, we're gonna do more of a plot breakdown. We're gonna emphasize the details, hence the spoiler warning. We're gonna be focused mostly on the episode in the comics, and the ancillary stuff will remain to the wayside for the most part. Not because it's not interesting or not worthy of discussion, but just because if we dive into it, this is gonna balloon. Perhaps another time, because again, it is interesting. So right off the bat, we have the episode's title, To Me, My X-Men. This phrase is spoken aloud by Cyclops in the episode.
To me, my X-Men.
The phrase comes with extreme 90s nostalgia, which is fitting given the context. But this phrase has an interesting history. A version of it does appear in X-Men number 1 from 1963. In the very last panel of the issue, after the team has stopped Magneto's missile attack and driven him back, and are then thanked by the military, we have Xavier's thoughts. Well done, students. You have justified all our long hours of training, all our sacrifices, all our dreams. And now, return to me, my X-Men. However, despite this, it's not something that instantly becomes Xavier's catchphrase or anything like that. In fact, in the next issue, he tells them to assemble. Now, from what I can glean, about to go Dorothy Ann, according to my research, and please, anybody, if you spot an instance that I missed, leave it down below the issue number, because you know there are a lot of X-Men comics out there. But from what I could see when I was rechecking, I didn't see it used again during the Renaissance era under Lee and Kirby, or in the Revival era under Claremont. It is possible that I missed it, but I don't think so, but I am open to the possibility. The book split and there are multiple titles in the 80s and 90s, and from the 90s in 1996, we have Pete Wisdom saying it in Excalibur 93. In that issue, he's LARPing as Charles Xavier, or well, he's dressed up as him, and he comes into the room saying it, starring the sentence with a dramatic "To me, my X-Men," which does give the impression that this is something iconic Xavier said. But as for Xavier himself saying it, well, kinda himself, we have to stay in 1996, but we have to go over to the Onslaught saga. It happened a couple of times here, but the most dramatic by far is X-Men 54. So the Onslaught arc in general is just an interesting time. Leading up to it, Xavier shut down Magneto's brain because he'd ripped the adamantium skeleton off Wolverine. It turned out that there had been a mind transfer when this happened, and Magneto's essence was in there and it was slowly influencing him. That would grow and manifest, eventually leading to a separate, or some viewed it as a fused personality in the form of Onslaught. An out-of-control Xavier with Magneto's thought process, who is just more than willing to use his methods. It was pretty devastating. Another prominent instance is in Grant Morrison's X-Men run of the early 2000s. We have New X-Men 116. Xavier, although again, this time it's not truly him, but him at the time, as far as everybody knew, saying it calmly, center of panel, in a way that makes it seem like the other instances, like it was something he said all along. It has the vibe, a bit of a beam me up Scotty moment, where it's just something that's osmosed into the public membrane, even though it didn't exactly occur the way people think. Nevertheless, it's become a thing used more and more frequently, to the point where when hearing it uttered or used as an episode title, it feels very quintessentially X-Men, and linked with Xavier. So you get that moment when Cyclops says it, and a very different feeling when Magneto sorta kinda says it. Now into the episode itself, or at least its intro, which is a mostly faithful recreation of the theme from 92. Some sequences are shot for shot, though the order of X-Men is changed, and there are additional scenes to accommodate Morph and Bishop. Morph is an interesting case, as one can see right away from the appearance chosen. So now we get to go into the history of Morph. In the original series, while Morph was based off of Changeling from the X-Men comics, the series presented an original character in a way, starting with a name change. This version could not go by Changeling because DC owned that trademark at that time, and it was being applied to Beast Boy. That was Beast Boy's other name, even though eventually people just go back to calling him Beast Boy, even when he's supposed to be called Changeling at times. Now, Marvel's Changeling debuted in X-Men 35 in 1967, but didn't last long, dying in issue 42, though the truth was fully revealed in 65. It was an act of atonement for Kevin Sidney had debuted as a villain. So while the 92 animated series Morph pulls the look from the 60s version, everything else from Name Up is seemingly original. They also intentionally wrote the character to be sacrificed early on. However, originally that character wasn't going to be Morph but Thunderbird. It was going to parallel what happened in 1975. Thunderbird debuted in Giant Size X-Men number 1 and was dead by issue 3. Now the 1975 run is what revitalizes the X-Men, and so it's understandable that they would want to pull some story ideas from there. What happened with Thunderbird is that the writers and editors felt that they had personality overlap between Thunderbird and Wolverine. However, the animated series creators after a time decided they weren't comfortable killing off a native character. So they looked around for another character to kill and settled on Changeling, who they subsequently renamed as Morph, which I feel is a better name in the long run. Also, the character was back by season 2 because of positive focus testing among younger viewers. All of this is detailed in showrunner Eric Lewald's book, Previously on X-Men, The Making of an Animated Series. Morph in the animated series does have the face that Changeling originally had in Kevin form. The smoother, more ambiguous white blank look comes from the Age of Apocalypse event in 1995, which presented Morph in this way. And then the character featured heavily in The Exiles, a very underrated series that more people should talk about. Morph. So the 97 animated series uses both looks. AOA/Exiles is the default hanging out the manor look, the 60s and 92 series average guy look for blending among humans. The episode itself opens with a few quick Easter eggs. The paper that blows by not only asks a question one would assume would be asked, which is Spider-Man a mutant? Jameson isn't sure, but he is sure he's a menace. There's also a Hellfire Gala mention alongside a story about a mutant fashion show, showcasing Banshee, Dust, Maggot, and Marrow. And if you squint, you can see Nature Girl and Squid Boy. Probably pre-plastic bag murder Nature Girl. This is referencing the Krakoan age of the X-Men and the Hellfire Gala from that era. The first being in 2021, which was a large 12-issue series, and then they were annual one-shots going forward, although they may not be anymore because the Krakoan era is ending, time of recording. On a meta level, they were modeled off of the Met Gala, and there were many fashion cover variants. In the universe, they were a party, but also a political maneuvering event, as non-mutants would be granted access to Krakoa, which for the most part could not physically be accessed by those without an X gene. At these events, they could witness things like the announcements of new X-Men teams, or the terraforming and subsequent conquest/claiming of Mars by the mutants. There were also a lot of celebrity cameos, so this paper seems to be a quick nod at acknowledging the more modern time recording X-Men era, even though we're going into the from the ashes and things are changing, because things are always moving. In the 97 universe, it's been a year since the assassination of Charles Xavier, but we see the Friends of Humanity are still very active, and that they're trafficking mutants.
Buyer's really gonna throw down 10 grand for every mutant we nab? Says he's using them for target practice.
The mutant they have in their clutches is Roberto or Bobby DaCosta, aka Sunspot, who debuted in Marvel graphic novel number 4, The New Mutants, in 1982. So some think that his presence here heralds at the idea that new mutant things are coming. Now, parts of this episode are retreads of the first 2 episodes of the 92 series, Night of the Sentinels, parts 1 and 2.
Who are you?
Cyclops, get down!
I don't have a whole lot of choice.
Deals. Good guy or bad guy?
Name's Cyclops. Definitely the good guy. Hang tight.
Mostly the instances with Bobby, and Bobby will be playing the role of Jubilee. So we have the Bobby gets captured, Bobby gets saved, Bobby is involved with Sentinels. They even follow beat for beat that after first getting to the manor, he runs away. Now, Bobby is rescued from his captors by the X-Men, Storm, Bishop, and Cyclops, and they all get to showcase their powers and have some cool moments. Cyclops in particular gets a chance to show off. He gets to use his powers a couple of ways and show how versatile his optic blasts can be.
Don't! I surrender!
Not.
Just the way the fight is choreographed in general, you get the feeling that there were some fans of video games on staff, particularly Marvel vs. Capcom. Seems like somebody wanted to give some cool moments to Cyclops. I approve. The Friends of Humanity have upgraded their tech with Sentinel-based blasters, but Cyclops is more concerned about the presence of the giant Sentinel hands just lurking in the back, as all of them were supposed to have been destroyed. Our FOH head is going to be shown to be the Executioner, but that doesn't come up for this episode, so we'll save it for the next one when he dons his costume. Bobby rescued, we can go to the manor, where now we see that Cyclops is the de facto leader of the team, and we get a slow down team building scene just to see where everybody's at, even though they're bickering and bantering.
The last few months have been rough, what with the professor being gone and all. But sugar, if you don't simmer down, you're gonna die of a stroke.
Gambit and his crop top that broke certain parts of the internet for very different reasons is cooking beignets, for he is a braver man than I. Think of the splashback and the pain. Gambit doesn't care. He fears no oil. He's perfected the technique. This kitchen scene is a good chance to hear some of the original voice actors mixed with the new crop, because there is a mix. Some people are returning, some not, for various reasons. Some are no longer with us. Some play different roles. Jean shows up and she's pregnant, ready to explode. This first episode spends some time just establishing the tone and team dynamics.
Stop being a creep, Morph.
Usually when there's downtime in between scenes, that's what it'll be used for. You'll have these character building moments between them. As mentioned, these are establishing the tone, and it feels like everything is picking up where it left off in terms of the 92 series. We now get to go to Bobby awakening and seeing that he's in a bed and there's Beast, but they also pan to a couple of things on the wall. One of the book covers on Beast's shelf has a nod to the OG showrunners, the one written by Lewald. The X-Men are hoping Bobby can give them some more info as to his kidnappers, but he's not interested in the X-Men or joining their crusade or even hanging out with them. Not even even after Jubilee shows him the danger room, he says that video games are for nerds. Truly, this is 97. He gets threatened by Wolverine, which probably did not help his enthusiasm for being there. This is a minor mirroring of how Jubilee came across Gambit and Wolverine sparring in Night of the Sentinels. There's a Gold Balls reference in this scene when Jubilee asks about Bobby's powers.
What can you do? Fly? Teleport? Shoot gold balls from your body?
Gold Balls is a real mutant. He debuted in 2013 in Uncanny X-Men #1. We see that Scott is not handling the stress of being leader very well.
You know, if he were here, the team wouldn't be shooting hoops while slime like the Friends of Humanity are running around with Sentinel blasters.
He's struggling to fill Xavier's shoes. There is this nice shot of him standing under a portrait of the original X-Men, which is the original roster from the 1963 comic, as he tries to liaise with the government and he's talking with Jean, and this shows that he's in the shadow of that. It's just some nice visual storytelling. Jean wants the two of them to leave so that they can live a life with their son, just a calm life, which for those up on their comic storylines would have issued an instant red alert. For a male child would mean Nathan Subbers, aka Cable, a baby who in the comics is not born from Jean, but from her clone, Madeline Pryor. So high drama. I'm excited for the drama. Now Wolverine has scared Bobby off.
Jubilee! What are you doing? Bozo here scared Roberto off.
They're all outside playing basketball, which was something showcased not just in 90s comics, but in the past series as well. The outfits are from X-Men #4 in the 90s run. Jubilee has on her personalized earrings from the Jim Lee era as well. Very nice. This scene just feels a bit odd because people were supposed to be guarding him. It was supposed to be a little important. The reason this is there is that we can see how the team reacts to tensions with Cyclops, and also Cyclops and Logan still butting heads with each other. Logan's still desperately in love with Jean, despite the fact that she's about to pop with another man's baby. He's not over it. They do some intense close-ups, which I was pondering in the last review, and some of you felt that they were homages to the Jim Lee and 90s era of just really close-up eyes. It works better in panel format in the comics than frames in these episodes. These are some of the segments in the episode that are a bit choppy in terms of how they move from scene to scene. Sometimes you get the nostalgia because they do it with an X-wipe or just a wipe in general, but even so, some things feel very abruptly cut together. It is interesting because while a bit of a flaw that could have been smoother, it entirely matches the 92 series. But the story is moving at a breakneck pace, and for some this will be off-putting. Wolverine is instantly able to track Bobby to a rave, because it's the 90s and people be raving. You would think that Morph might not want to have on the huge X jacket, maybe some more club clothes, it's fine. In a continuation of this episode's mission to fill us in on the character's status quos, Rogue is highlighted as missing physical intimacy. While her and Gambit are doing well, it's shown that that is something that she's yearning for. Wolverine doesn't want Jean to leave, and Jubilee flirts a bit with Bobby, or he flirts with her, mutual flirting and raving. Bobby is used here to highlight some contrasting opinions with mutants and just the X-Men, that there are some people who aren't interested in joining them and maybe don't want to be involved in their crusade. Some people just want to live their lives and feel that maybe the X-Men aren't helping by being so out there in public. For Bobby, there's a personal reason for that that'll be highlighted later on, and it's also meant to be a subtle, although it's not very subtle, call out to certain attitudes that are held outside in the real world. A lot of that is happening with the writing in this. While this is happening, Cyclops has taken Storm and Bishop to talk to Gyrick to find out why there are more Sentinels. Where is Trask? Is there another Master Mold? This is mostly used as a space to get to hear the headspace of the people who oppose the X-Men in their existence.
But we know the naked truth. Tolerance is extinction.
That line is also the name of the last 3 episodes of this season, so potentially foreshadowing. Jean invades Gyrick's mind with Cerebro to get the information she needs, but as she does, she is accosted by something or someone else, and sees horrible visions for her and her baby, and just mutant kind in general. Despite this, they have the locations, they know where to go, and it's the Sahara Desert. They have to go find Trask, and they lose their jet in the process, and people are very, very calm about that.
Solid work, team.
Just another day losing a multi-million-dollar jet. It's fine. The scene where Cyclops pulses himself to the ground, I joked about in the last video, because it always amuses me when Scott does this, and I feel like he should snap his neck. Some people disagree. I feel like neck snap day, but it's cool. It looks cool. Whatever the reason, whether it would work or not, it's just cool looking. I like it. However, this statement ignited a firestorm, as did me wondering whether Bestie was used. I swear it was BFF, but some people argued, no, it was Bestie. It got pretty intense in some places. There was discussion. There was rage. This is all fun, or it should be. However, as it pertains to this scene with Cyclops, a few people commented, but this is a deep lore cut to Cyclops' origin. And as they said that, it jogged loose a memory, and I vaguely did remember something like that. Cyclops has had a few origins. It's been presented a couple of ways, but I felt that that was entirely plausible because this series, like its predecessor, does harken back to certain moments loosely, and not always with a direct panel-to-panel comparison. And so I was off on a search. I knew what I was looking for. The fall from the plane. Him and his brother Alex are Havoc, and their parents get abducted up to the Starjammer, but they don't see that. They're falling. This is the fall where sometimes Cyclops gets a head injury and sometimes not. Sometimes a piece of the plane falls and hits him. Sometimes he smacks the ground. Sometimes that's the reason he has to block on his powers and can't control them. Other times it didn't happen, it's a mental block. With all that said, I was looking for a version where he used his optic blast to slow his descent. This search, I started to feel insane. I checked the origins I could remember first. Uncanny X-Men 156, 144, X-Factor 115, X-Men Origins Cyclops, Classic X-Men 15, Uncanny Origins 1, nada. Went looking for hyperlinks, nothing. In pure true desperation, asked an AI generative search, and that was an amusing moment because it just lied to me. It made things up. That's Jean's funeral issue. You can't trick me. Why are you lying to me, AI? Truly, it becomes more human every day. All hope seemed lost until my friend Amanda, who I asked, found it relatively quickly and made me feel nothing but shame. She lives and breathes the X-Men, so she was the person to ask, and she came through. She has a channel where she chats all kinds of nerdy stuff. Check it out, I'll link it down below. The point is, it's X-Factor 39. Not that you see that happen, but it's mentioned in a narration box. Now, if there is another comic panel where you actually see that, let me know. I'm sure she'd like to know too. Some people think it happened like that in X-Men Evolution, but his powers don't manifest there either. Still a cool scene. It was worth it. Looking for it was worth it. This is a cool link to his origin. It's nice to see an adult Cyclops pulling off a controlled version of this maneuver, contrasting with the desperation of his childhood. The desert battle sequence, where they do find Trask with a master mold out here, is one of the highlights of the episode. They use the classic theme as a motif. Every member gets a chance to show off. They do combo moves, some that people feel work, others that they feel don't. Beast cracks painfully corny reference jokes, just like he did in the 92 series.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful involuntary friendship.
In these sequences, the animation flows quite smoothly. I know people are mixed on the style, particularly the lack of shadows on the face. Mileage will vary. In terms of what's happening in the sequence, there are some fun nods here, like when Cyclops summons Storm.
Give him the forecast.
Omega level threat detected.
Storm is identified here as an Omega level threat, which is just a cool nod to Omega level mutants. Omega level mutants being the most powerful in their specific power set. The classification was first used in Uncanny X-Men 208. The story was Retribution from the year 1986, the Claremont era. It's seen under the heading of Class Omega. It's used by Nimrod, and you see it as his readout as he scans Phoenix. It wasn't fully defined yet. Storm is an Omega level mutant, so it's just cool to see that. Just in general, how they used her powers made them feel so big and awe-inspiring. They really showcased her. Of course, we have her with her mohawk, which she donned in Uncanny X-Men 173, in the story To Have and Have Not from 1983. It's not universally well received. Kitty Pryde runs away crying when she sees it. Cyclops calls it striking. That could go either way. Now in the episode, they defeat the Sentinels, Trask is captured, but not before uttering some ominous lines.
You've no idea how it feels to be left behind by the future.
On the whole though, things are looking up. Sunspot decides not to stay, he leaves. He has a discussion about his powers, which is meant to be an allegory about coming out, or rather not coming out to one's family, and then he flirts with Jubilee and leaves.
Here,
What's your job? Hot and rich?
don't forget single. Page me. I got a jet too. Maybe I'll even let you fly it.
Cyclops is shown to be more mellow as he's joining in the basketball game. His hat's backwards, 97. There's questions as to whether him and Jean are leaving, but they don't get to answer because the alarm goes off, the intruder alarm. And my first thought when they got to the room where the intruder is, was nobody picked up that photo that got knocked off the wall earlier? They left it there so that Magneto could put it up so you could see who it was off screen. Now Magneto has shown up because Charles left everything to him. His money, his mansion, his X-Men. This is because we're referencing a very specific time period and storyline, which began in Uncanny X-Men 200, The Trial of Magneto, which will be even more closely adapted next episode. But in that issue, Charles died, or started to die, from a heart attack, and then Lilandra had to show up and come and help him. And while him and Eric were alone in these very suggestive panels, he asked him to watch over the X-Men for him and follow his dream. And despite his reservations, Magneto agreed. This was a fascinating era, and a personal favorite for me. And it's already interesting to see it paired with some other plot points that came later, which was something else the 92 series did, which this series seems to be following in the spirit of, just pulling plots from different eras, putting them together in a way that makes it feel like this is a very unique universe. Charles wrote a whole book of Last Will and Testament, huh? It's nicely balanced so Magneto can dramatically flow it over to people. He's thinking of everything. So with this revelation, the episode ends. And there's a brief moment where they recreate the computer-generated spinning X-Men models they had in the 92 credits, though they don't maintain it and they go to other credits after. So, episode 1. In a nutshell, very fun. The way it comes together, it's a fun experience. This episode does a good job of presenting or representing the characters and their dynamics inside their new status quo of 1 year post the last series finale. There are some real banter highlights.
There will be no dismembering, Wolverine.
Dismembering? Nah. Weight loss.
The stakes are established and the characters are showcased. Kernels are laid for various plot threads, and there are many directions they could go. In terms of matching the tone of the original series, it's near seamless, though there are some rough edges. Some are just because natural changes over time. The animation is different, even if it attempts to approximate. Some of the voices are different, either different actors or just age. The aspect ratio is different. But on the whole, it feels true to the original that's continuing. And that's impressive with something that's coming with such a big gap in time. Just because fans worked on it and some of the original actors are back, that didn't guarantee that it was going to have the same feeling, and the fact that it comes so close, at times entirely matching, that's noteworthy. Now, on the other hand, the writing is on the nose and heavy-handed at points. However, it can also be thoughtful and present a few more angles than some may expect, so that lends it some depth. It's certainly elicited a response, and people are discussing how they feel about it, and that means it's serving its intended purpose because some of these speeches and moments are set up as set pieces. And again, some of that overtness does mirror the writing from the earlier series, but if one felt that was a flaw there, then they may still feel it's a flaw here. The pacing is breakneck, which again matches the earlier iterations, but that could be conceived of as a flaw of the first series, which seems to have carried over. There's a fear in some corners that they're going to burn through plots too fast. As mentioned, some of the cuts are choppy, and sometimes it feels as though scenes or explanations are missing. For some, this will be grating, for others not, because it never gets to the point where it's not possible to follow what's going on. One of the most important aspects, given the target audience, is it's exciting for kids. As mentioned, it has a very similar energy to the original, and that got many kids into the X-Men. And at the same time, it's a revisiting for many older fans. So there's much expanded potential in terms of getting people into the X-Men, the comics, the earlier series, or just in general. There are many people who are saying that they're going back to rewatch the original, or that they're rewatching it first. Generational fandom fun. Now, of course, for some, these intense past connections may be off-putting, if there's something they're paying heed to. Where some see connection, others see baggage, and the enthusiasm may seem overwhelming. Indeed, in some corners, there is a bit of a you need to love it or hate it situation going on. On the whole, this episode is a great entry point and will give you a strong idea as to whether or not you're going to enjoy what's happening going forward. But as with anything, as I always say, if possible, check it out for yourself. Everybody else's opinions are always going to be filtered through some of their own lenses, so the only way you can be sure 100%, even though you may have an inkling, is if you give it a shot. Now, of course, your presuppositions may be proven entirely correct, or they may not be. It may surprise you. It did me. I didn't think it would manage to match the tone so closely. It's literally been decades. Some people say I'm a cynic for doubting, but I say rule number 1, son, trust no one. But yes, this was episode 1. Let me know if you want to take a look at episode 2, The Trial of Magneto. Anything else you want to mention or discuss about this episode? I want to keep talking about it. It's a good time. Did you enjoy this episode? Did you not? What era of X-Men, if any, is your fave? Put it all down below. While you're down there, please do all the YouTube things like share, comment, subscribe, hit that bell notification so that you never miss a vid. Thanks so much for taking some time spent discussing comics with me. I always appreciate it, and I will see you again soon. Bye-bye.